It's funny. I'm uneducated. Or self-educated. I'm not formally educated, that's for sure. And I'm a DIY guy. Like I don't know what planetary archetype fits that the best, but
Sure.
like uh, and for me, like I think looking back, um, the time I spent in punk and grunge bands informed my spirituality way more than any book that I read before.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
and I recognize that the spirit of DIY and grunge and punk in the mysticism and in the in my view the truest sense. So, and also, like when I listen to you speak about magic, um, you seem to put a point to make it very important for people to start from their own experience, to try something. And even though the grimoire says that's not how you do it, well, you try, maybe I don't know, you know better than me, maybe try the grimoire first, but then if it doesn't work, figure out your own way and try to adapt
Mm,
the.
mm.
So how would you say that in magic, in a practice in general, how important is it to create or adapt one's own rituals, um,
Hmm.
uh, and if so, if it's important, which I guess you will say that
Mhm.
it can be important. What would you say is the most important thing to be mindful of when kind of appropriating the rituals for yourself
Mm,
and your
mm.
own practice?
It's a great question. I think you'll be hard pressed to find a magic practitioner who doesn't believe that it's a good idea to have. Maybe you won't be so hard pressed, but anyway, um, I most of the magic practitioners that I know and respect, there we go, will probably agree that it's a good idea to have followed an established practice for a good amount of time before inventing your own.
Hmm.
And this is because it'll give you an idea of what's supposed to happen. And
Hmm.
if you're then okay, if you're, I think it's like pretty much any skill. If you're setting out to become a cinematographer, right? Somebody who makes who holds a camera on a film set, and you just turn up on day one, having never had any training, you're unlikely to produce something of any worth. And that's not because you're not capable of creating something from scratch. It's just that creating something from scratch is going to take you a long time, and day one is certainly not going to be your best work. And
Hmm.
if you've got no idea what has been done before, you'll spend ages reinventing the wheel, and you might not know something that, like a trick that is kind of essential, that everyone is doing, and that is solving all the problems that you're encountering on day one because you're trying to work it out. Um, uh, sure, you might find that the end result in 50 years' time of
Hmm.
figuring it all out on your own is quite original, right? You won't be influenced
Yeah.
by any other creator before you, but you'll also probably not be making what is commonly recognized as movies. So in the
Mhm.
same way, in magic, like you can start off on your own going, okay, what do I think magic should be? And like imagining your own thing and working out that, okay, what I tried didn't work. Let's see what else I can do. Yeah, it still didn't work.
Mhm.
Okay, let's keep going. It still doesn't work. Well, a really nice thing to do is to follow a system that already exists for a time, right? For as long as it takes you to feel like you are at least at least good at this system, right? But
Mhm.
then once you are, let's say, good at this system, I think it's important to recognize that this system was created by maybe a person, maybe a group of people, um, and individuals are unique, and you are unique, and maybe the some of the details are not right for you, and you can intuitively sense that, okay, I can see what this is doing, but I can
Mhm.
also see that in my case this other thing would work much better, right? So then, yeah, well, then you might go and choose another direction and choose another path, and many people do,
Yeah.
right? They go, oh no, I'm done with whatever Wicca. I'm going to go full on in the Tibetan Buddhist direction now, right? And they do, and they pour 10 years into that, and they realize, oh, there's a lot of stuff that I was doing in the Wicca Lodge that are completely applicable here. I can see that, yeah, all right. So this particular aspect is done much more skillfully, but I need to understand this particular Tibetan way of thinking about it. I wonder, what would be the best way for me? So then you can start
Mhm.
making your own path. I to come back to your question, however, you were asking
Yep.
why it's important to bring in your own flavor. And
Mhm.
and actually, you started the question by giving an example of taking a grimoire doesn't quite work, so you might alter certain things.
Mhm.
There was this listen, a podcast that I heard like 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 6 years ago now. Um, And for the life of me, I can't remember who it was on this podcast. I've been putting out feelers. I think it's you. Did you say a thing like this? And everyone keeps answering. I have no idea what you're talking about. Sounds like it could or may not have been me. Sorry. So I just can't work out which podcast it was, and I can't work out who was the guest. But they were saying this.
Mhm.
They were saying when you are following instructions for calling out to a spirit, it's important, obviously, to know what the tradition is, what the generally accepted methods are, right?
Mhm.
Because that'll be good stuff. But it's also important not to think of it as a recipe for the following reasons. Or reason. It's very much like taking someone out on a date. And I love this analogy. You take someone out on a
Mhm.
date, you pick certain clothes, you pick maybe a particular aftershave or whatever. You pick a restaurant, like a really nice restaurant, and you get to the restaurant, and the date goes beautifully. The food is delicious. You have a really nice, interesting, engaging conversation, and you're unavoidably attracted to each other. Like you get closer over the delicious food and drink and conversation, and it's just wonderful. And you go
Mhm.
home maybe to one of your apartments, and there's a happy ending, right? And you think, well, great, that's my my recipe then. right? And then
Oh, yeah.
you're right. If you were to repeat that like 2 days later, you turn up with the same clothes at the same restaurant, and like, your friend's going to be like, that's weird. And then you like force the conversation into the same topics and make sure that you use the same words. And
Hmm.
like, that's not a guarantee of an exchange. It's not a guarantee of chemistry. It's not a guarantee of understanding of that relationship magic happening. And
Hmm.
talking to spirits is very much like that. So it's a good idea to know that this particular spirit doesn't like the smell of roses, right? It's a good idea to know that this spirit particularly likes, I don't know, mint, or the color red, or whatever, right? So you can
Yeah.
you can then avoid or make sure that you bring these things, right?
Hmm.
But it's one thing to know their preferences and to know what has worked in the past for other practitioners and so on, and it's quite another to obsessively follow a recipe, right? Because ultimately
Yeah.
it's a relationship that you're building. Anyway, so that's my reason for remembering that not to be following to the letter,
Hmm.
to use some of the things that you can see have worked, and to ensure that you have at least the basic ingredients. But it's important that it is you, coming in front of these spirits, and not just like a robot saying the right words
Yeah.
that will make the thing happen, right? Yeah, that's my perspective.